Hey everyone, it's the Haunting Hour here. Before we jump into today's video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy the content. And if you have any thoughts on the stories in this video, feel free to drop them in the comments below. I always love hearing your feedback. Now, let's get into the terrifying stories. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you all have an awesome day. My wife started sleepwalking 3 weeks ago. That's what I told myself the first night I woke up and found her standing by the bedroom door. She wasn't moving, just standing. Her arms hung loose at her sides. Her head tilted slightly to the left, like she was listening to something behind the walls. It was exactly 3 o'clock. Her eyes were open, but there was no light in them, no tension in her face. It was like someone had emptied her out and left the shell behind. I sat up and called her name softly. She didn't respond. I slid out of bed and walked toward her, unsure if I should touch her. I hesitated for just a second, then gently tapped her arm. Her skin was cold, not room temperature cold, actual cold, like she'd been outside in the middle of the night. She blinked once and turned around without saying a word. Then she walked straight out of the room. I followed her. She didn't grab shoes. She didn't bring a flashlight. She walked out of the back door and into the woods behind our house, like she knew where she was going. It was early spring, so the air still held that leftover bite from winter. The moon was full. That's the only reason I could see it all. Her white pajama top glowed like paper under the light. I kept my distance, but stayed close enough to keep her in view. The trees thinned as we moved deeper. At 3:30, she stepped into a clearing I'd never noticed before. The ground there was bare, no grass, just packed earth surrounded by silent trees. She didn't hesitate. She knelt down and started digging with her bare hands. I didn't say anything. I just stood behind a tree and watched. I could hear the soft scrape of her fingers moving dirt, the slow and steady rhythm of her breath. She didn't grunt or strain, even when the soil got thick with roots. Her hands moved like she'd done this hundreds of times. There was a calm to her movements that made it worse. The silence, the focus, it didn't belong to someone who was asleep. After several minutes, she stopped. She reached into the hole she'd made and pulled something out. I couldn't see what it was from where I stood. She slipped it into her pocket, stood up, and turned around. Her face was blank. Her eyes flicked past me like she didn't see me at all. She walked back home without speaking. She climbed into bed and pulled the covers up without saying a word. The next morning, I woke up before her. She was still asleep, breathing deep and slow. I left her there and walked outside. I found the clearing again, easier in daylight. The spot was real. The hole was still there, freshly dug and uneven. I knelt and ran my fingers through the loose dirt. Something metallic caught the sunlight. I reached in and pulled out a scrap of thin chain. Not long, not valuable looking. Next to it was a torn piece of black cloth. It looked like it could have come from a jacket. That's all I found. I walked back to the house. She was already in the kitchen, sipping coffee, acting like nothing had happened. Her hands were clean. I didn't ask her anything. Later that day, when she was in the shower, I checked her nightstand. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. I found it tucked beneath a stack of old receipts and nail files, a small silver locket. I opened it. Inside was a faded photo of a girl I didn't recognize. She looked young, early 20s, long blonde hair, freckles across her nose. The photo was grainy, but the face was clear enough. That night, I watched the local news for the first time in months. I wasn't expecting anything. I just let it run while I sat there with the locket in my hand. Then the screen cut to a missing person segment. Cora Henderson, 22 years old, last seen leaving a bar 2 towns over. The anchor said she was missing as of last Tuesday. I stared at the TV. It was the same girl. I checked the date. Cora had gone missing 5 days ago. The locket had dirt around the hinge. My wife said nothing. That night she made dinner, asked about work, and laughed at a joke I made about the neighbors. She acted like everything was normal, but I kept staring at her hands. They were spotless, but her cuticles looked raw. The skin beneath one fingernail had a dark line I hadn't noticed before. That night I didn't sleep. I lay there pretending, my back to her. At 3 o'clock I heard the bedsheets move. Then the creak of the floorboards. Then the soft click of the door. I got up a few minutes later, flashlight in hand. I followed her again. She walked to the same clearing, knelt, and began to dig. But this time she didn't pull anything out. She kept digging until her hands were caked in dark soil. Her breathing stayed even, but her shoulders twitched with each movement. I saw blood on her fingers. Her skin had torn open, but she didn't stop. Then she looked up, right at me, not past me, at me, and she smiled. Then she said, I wasn't sleepwalking. Her voice was calm, too calm. She stood up and walked home. No hesitation, no confusion. I stood there for a long time, staring at the hole she'd left. I didn't sleep that night. 2 days passed. She acted like nothing had happened. I checked online for updates. Kara Henderson's page was gone. Not mark as found, just gone, like she'd never been missing at all. I checked the locker, still in the drawer, still holding her photo. That Friday, I came home from work around 5 o'clock. My wife was standing at the edge of the woods, arms at her sides, staring into the trees. She didn't look at me when I pulled into the driveway. She didn't turn around. She just stood there. Later, she asked me what I wanted for dinner, as if nothing had happened. I started locking our bedroom door at night. I told her I was worried about animals getting in through the doggy door we hadn't sealed yet. She laughed and said I was being paranoid. At 30 o'clock the next night, I woke up and found her sitting on the edge of the bed. Not standing, sitting, hands on her knees, staring straight ahead at the locked door. When I said her name, she didn't move. The next morning, the shovel was leaning against the side of the house. I hadn't left it there. That weekend, I installed a trail camera in the woods. I placed it high, out of sight, aimed at the clearing. I checked it the next morning. The memory card was empty, not corrupted, not erased, just empty, like nothing had ever passed in front of the lens. That night, I followed her again. At 3 o'clock, she walked into the woods. I didn't bring a flashlight this time. I let the moon guide me, but she didn't stop at the old clearing. She went farther. We walked deeper than I'd ever gone before. Trees grew closer together. The ground turned to soft moss and thick roots. Finally, she stopped beside an old tree. Its bark was black and peeling. Its trunk had a hollow carved out at the base, just wide enough to crawl inside. She knelt beside it and whispered something I couldn't hear. Then she began to dig, not in front of the tree, but behind it. I stayed still, hidden. She dug for several minutes, then stood and stepped aside. There was something in the hole, a body. The skin was pale and stretched. The eyes were closed, hair matted with blood and dirt. The clothes looked torn, but still recognizable. One hand stuck up at an odd angle, fingers curled. I couldn't breathe. She turned and looked at me again, and then she said, "It uses me to carry them. When they die, I know where to go." She sounded awake, like she understood every word she said. Then she began covering the body with dirt. I turned and ran. I didn't stop until I reached the house. I called the sheriff's office the next morning, told them I'd seen something suspicious in the woods. I gave a vague location. I didn't mention her. I just said I'd found what looked like a shallow grave. They called me 2 days later, said they searched the area, said they found nothing, not even a disturbed patch of dirt. That night at 3 o'clock, I opened my eyes and saw her standing by the window, staring out. Her hands were clean, but I noticed something strange. There was dirt under my fingernails. I hadn't gone outside all day. 3 nights ago, I woke up standing in the hallway. My feet were muddy. There were leaves on the floor behind me. The back door was wide open. I never heard it unlock. The next morning, there was a piece of paper on the kitchen counter. No envelope, no writing, just a photo. A printed photo of me, standing in the woods, back turned, holding a shovel. I don't remember taking it. That same day, I checked my phone gallery. The photo wasn't there. I didn't tell her. She made lasagna that night. We ate on the porch. She talked about booking a weekend trip somewhere up north. She laughed. She said I needed a break. She's right. I haven't been sleeping much. But I've been going out at 3 o'clock every morning, I wake up with my shoes already on. Sometimes the shovel is already leaning against the wall near the back door. Last night, I found myself halfway to the tree before I realized I was even outside. I didn't stop walking. I knew the way. This morning, I found dirt on the laundry room floor, a trail of it leading from the back door to the washing machine. The load inside was finished. All of it was mine. My hands ache. My shoulders are sore. There's a cut on my palm I don't remember getting. She watches me differently now, not with fear, with patience, like she knows something I don't. I think the thing that used her is done with her now. I think it lives in me. I haven't seen her leave the bed in 5 days. But every night at 3 o'clock, I'm the one who rises. I don't think this ends with me being buried. I think I'm the one who buries, and I think I'm just getting started. I got home at 8 p.m. sharp that night. I remember because the microwave clock blinked the time at me as I closed the door. I dropped my keys in the dish by the counter and tossed my bag on the table like I always do, not thinking twice. The apartment was quiet, just the low hum of the fridge and the soft ticking of the hallway clock. I kicked off my shoes and stood there for a second, zoning out. My body felt heavier than it should have. Long day at work, longer commute home. I reached into my hoodie pocket for my phone, mostly out of habit, but came up empty. That was strange. I always check it as soon as I walk in. I unzipped the side pouch of my bag where I usually keep it. Nothing. I checked the main compartment. Still nothing. I emptied the whole bag on the table. Wallet, charger, lip balm, random receipts, all there, but no phone. That creeping frustration hit. The kind where you know something's off, but you're still telling yourself it's not a big deal yet. I ran back down the mental list of my day. I remembered checking the train schedule on it during my break around 2 p.m. After that, nothing. I didn't remember using it again. I told myself I probably left it at work, or dropped it in the ride chair on the way home. That kind of thing happens. I stood in the hallway, staring at the landline on the wall. I barely used it, but it was there for exactly this reason. I picked it up and dialed my cell number. It rang. I froze. If it was ringing, that meant the phone was on. It wasn't dead. It wasn't shut off. That meant it had to be nearby, or someone found it. It rang again, then again. Someone answered. They didn't say anything. I said hello. No response. I waited, but all I heard was breathing, slow and steady. Not gasping, not background noise. Just someone deliberately holding the phone close and breathing into the speaker. Not quite heavy. I stood there with the receiver pressed to my ear, feeling the sweat form in the creases of my hand. I didn't move for a full minute. Then I called back. No answer. I tried again, straight to voicemail. It was 8:36 p.m. when I gave up. I told myself it was probably a prank. Someone found my phone and decided to screw with me. People do that. That's a thing that happens. But it didn't sit right. Something about the way the voice said it, like he wasn't answering my question. He was correcting me. I checked the locks. All of them were in place. I turned off the kitchen light and started walking up the stairs. Halfway up, I stopped. My bedroom door was open. That door is always closed when I'm not home. I make a point of it. It's not a superstition or anything. I just don't like coming home to dark rooms, especially the bedroom. It always makes me feel like someone's standing just inside the doorway. I stared up at the open door, trying to remember if maybe I left in a rush that morning. Maybe I forgot, but even as I stood there, I knew I hadn't. I walked up slowly, my hand brushing the wall as I climbed. I reached the top, stepped into the doorway, and flipped on the light. My room looked normal. Curtains closed, bed made, closet doors shut. Nothing out of place, except the phone. It was sitting on the nightstand, face down. I didn't move for a while. My mind was doing flips, trying to figure out how it could be there. I had just called it. It wasn't in my bag. It wasn't in the kitchen. And now it was back, sitting perfectly still on the nightstand like it had never moved. I walked over and picked up. The back was warm, not hot, but warmer than it should have been. I turned it over. No missed calls, no messages. It was on silent. I hadn't put it on silent. I left it where it was and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I told myself I must have just overlooked it, that I'd somehow missed it during the search. Maybe I set it down and forgot. That happens when you're tired. At work, I didn't focus. Every time someone's phone buzzed, I flinched. I checked mine constantly, even though there was nothing new. I didn't want to tell anyone. What would I say? That my phone disappeared and came back after a stranger breathed into the receiver. That I found it warm, sitting where I knew it hadn't been. I stayed late at the office that day, not because I had to, but because I didn't want to go home. When I finally got back, I double-checked every lock. I left the hallway light on. I turned the ringer up on my phone. I even placed it in a glass bowl on the coffee table, like it might stop it from disappearing again. I went to bed around 10 p.m. At 2 a.m., I woke up cold. I was still in bed, but the covers were pulled halfway off. That's not normal for me. I sleep still, neat, and the closet door was cracked open. I knew I had closed it. I stared at it for a long time without moving. Eventually, I got up and checked. Nothing inside but clothes and shoes. Still, I left the light on when I went back to bed. I didn't close the closet again. The next few nights were like that. Subtle changes, the kind that make you question your memory. A lamp I didn't remember turning on. A cabinet open that should have been closed. Nothing huge, nothing dramatic. But it added up. Friday night, I fell asleep early, around 9 p.m. I was drained from pretending everything was fine. At 1 a.m., my phone buzzed. No ringtone, just the vibration, soft but steady. I rolled over and grabbed it. One new message. No number, no contact. Just, still hear you. I stared at it for a long time. The screen dimmed. When I opened the messaging app, the message was gone. It wasn't in the inbox. No trace of it in the notifications. I got dressed, grabbed my bag, and left. I drove to my sister's place across town without calling first. She didn't ask questions when I let myself in with the spare key. I just curled up on the couch and left the phone powered off. I stayed there all weekend, didn't check the phone, didn't even look at it. When I was ready to head home Monday morning, I opened my bag to make sure everything was where it should be. The phone wasn't there. I checked every pocket, every compartment. It was gone. When I got back to my apartment at 9 a.m., it was sitting on the kitchen table, face down, exactly where I dropped my keys on the first night. Underneath it was something new, a photo, printed, glossy, standard size. It was me, sleeping. The angle was from the foot of the bed. I was turned to the side, face visible, eyes closed, blanket pulled to my shoulder. The timestamp at the bottom said 3 a.m. I dropped it, called the police, told them someone had broken in and taken pictures of me in my sleep. They came out, checked the place, took the photo. Dusted for prints. Nothing. No sign of forced entry. No foreign fingerprints. They filed a report, but said they'd probably never trace it. That was the last time I felt like anyone was going to help me. I started crashing at friends' places, cheap hotels. I even slept in my car once, just to avoid being alone in that apartment. I kept the phone turned off, but it never stayed off for long. I checked my bag and find it powered on, the ringer off, new photos in the gallery, then gone again the next day. Eventually, I stopped trying to keep it away. A few days ago, I came home and found every mirror in the apartment turned to face the wall. Bathroom, bedroom, hall closet. I hadn't touched them. I turned them back. The next morning, they were flipped again. I don't sleep much anymore, and when I do, I wake up in strange places. Once on the porch, once in the hallway, once outside, barefoot on the sidewalk, staring at my building. It's always between 3 and 4 a.m. The door behind me locked tight, and I know I didn't open it. Now it's 8:03 p.m. I'm sitting in the living room with every light on. I've shoved the furniture against the doors. I haven't eaten today. I'm not hungry. I keep looking at the phone. It's on the floor next to me. It just buzzed. No number. One word. Inside. I didn't answer, but I can hear it again. Not the phone. The breathing. It's coming from upstairs. I want to run. I don't. I think I'm past running. This morning, I opened the drawer where I kept the photo. I hadn't touched it in weeks. I don't even remember putting it there. I just needed to see it again, needed to be sure. But it wasn't the same. The angle was different, closer. I was sitting up in bed this time, eyes open, looking straight at the camera, and my mouth was open like I was about to say something. I closed the drawer and sat on the floor for a long time. I don't think it's waiting for night anymore. And I don't think I sleepwalk. I think I follow. And it keeps taking pictures, closer, every time. I was 7 when I started to feel like something in my life wasn't right. Not in any obvious way. Just small, quiet things. The kind of details your brain keeps circling back to, even when you tell yourself not to worry. I didn't have the words for it at the time. I just remember feeling like one of the corners of my world didn't match the others. Back then, it was just me and my mom living in a 2-bedroom duplex outside of town. The kind of place where the paint always peeled around the windows and the yard stayed patchy no matter how much it rained. My mom worked long hours at the hospital, and I was a quiet kid. I kept to myself, spent most of my time drawing or watching cartoons with the volume low. I liked being alone. It was easier that way. I met Milo on a cold, overcast Saturday. I'd been stuck inside all afternoon while it drizzled outside. I remember I was digging through this old wooden toy chest in the corner of my room, looking for something to do. I pulled out a broken plastic dinosaur, turned around, and there he was, just sitting on the floor like he'd always been there. Legs crossed, hands in his lap, head tilted slightly like he was curious about me. I thought he was a neighbor kid at first. Maybe someone who wandered in while my mom was out back were doing laundry. He looked about my age, and something about him felt familiar, even though I knew I'd never seen him before. I didn't ask questions. I just handed him the toy, and we played like we were old friends. When it got dark, I looked away for a second, and he was gone. I told my mom about him that night. She smiled and said it was sweet that I had an imaginary friend. She said it was normal, even healthy, and I remember feeling confused because Milo didn't feel imaginary. I could hear him walking. I saw him pick things up. He made space in the room when he moved. He came back the next day, and the day after that. Before long, he was always around. He never knocked. He never waited to be invited in. I'd come home from school, and he'd already be there, sitting on my bed or crouched under the desk. He didn't speak much. When he did, his voice was soft and low, like the sound of someone reading quietly to themselves. He never talked about himself, never mentioned parents, or school, or anything outside the house. I didn't press him on it. At first, it was nice having someone around. We played games, we drew together. Sometimes I'd leave snacks out for him, but he never ate them. He never seemed hungry or tired or cold. He never blinked. As time went on, I started to notice other things. His skin wasn't pale in a normal way. It was too smooth, too dry, like paper that had been left in the sun. His hair was a bright, almost glowing yellow. Not blonde, not dyed, just yellow. His eyes were the worst part. His pupils were horizontal slits, like goat eyes, and they reflected light in a way that made my stomach turn. I asked him once where he lived. He didn't speak, just turned and pointed toward my closet. That night, I made sure the door was shut before I went to bed. When I woke up in the morning, it was open. He started getting more possessive after that. When I brought home drawings from school, he'd tear them up and leave the pieces scattered across the floor. My toys would go missing, then reappear days later, broken in half. I stopped inviting people over. Even when my mom had friends visit, Milo would stand in the hallway and stare at them without blinking. I tried setting rules, told him he could only come over during the day, told him to stop messing with my things, but it didn't work. He kept showing up whenever he wanted. Sometimes I'd wake up and find him standing over me, just watching. His face would be inches from mine, unmoving. I stopped sleeping through the night. When I was 8, I started getting in trouble at school. The teacher said I was acting out. My grades dropped. I turned in drawings they didn't understand. Trees with teeth, houses without doors, dark figures with no faces. My mom started getting phone calls. She sat me down one night and asked what was going on. I told her it was Milo, that he was the one doing these things, that he was getting worse. She looked at me like I was breaking her heart, told me it was time to stop pretending. So I stopped talking about him. That summer, my mom sent me to stay with my uncle for a week. He lived in a trailer outside of town, tucked behind rows of trees that never seemed to stop swaying, even when the air was still. There was no internet, barely any TV. I hoped Milo would stay behind. I hoped whatever had tied him to me had something to do with that old duplex. But he came anyway. One night, around 3 a.m., I woke up to the sharp, rhythmic tapping, like hooves scraping against the floor. I sat up slowly, not sure what I was hearing. The room was dark, lit only by a faint yellow glow from the hallway. He was standing in the corner. But it wasn't Milo the way I remembered him. His arms were longer, his legs bent the wrong way, like the joints had shifted. His face had stretched into something narrow and inhuman, and his eyes had grown, wide and shining. His skin looked even thinner, almost translucent. He walked over slowly, each step tapping on the wood like a metronome. He knelt by my bed, leaned in close, and I felt his breath, hot, damp, and sour, like mold under a sink. "I'm always with you," he whispered. It was the first time he ever spoke without being asked a question. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. I lay there shaking until morning. I lied to my uncle and said I was homesick. He drove me back early. I begged my mom to help, told her something was wrong. She took me to a doctor who said I was showing signs of stress, maybe even early symptoms of dissociation. He used words I didn't understand and gave me a prescription. Said the pills would help me feel more grounded. They made me sick. I threw up almost every day. I started waking up in different parts of the house. On the floor, under the table, once in the hallway closet. The drawings came back. More violent than before, I started seeing Milo in my dreams again. Only he wasn't waiting anymore. He was always reaching. I began to think the pills were helping him. Like every time they made me weaker, he got stronger. Every night, he looked more solid, more detailed. It was my aunt who finally did something. She showed up one evening uninvited. She walked into my room without knocking and stood still for a long time. Then she left and came back the next day with a man I'd never seen before. He didn't look special. He wasn't wearing robes or carrying candles, just jeans, boots, and a baseball cap. He didn't introduce himself, just asked one question. "Where does he usually stand?" I pointed to the corner by my bookshelf. The man nodded, took out a jar of cloudy water, and dipped his fingers into it. Then he placed his hand on my forehead. "Keep your eyes closed, no matter what you hear." The room dropped 10 degrees in seconds. I heard my bookshelf crash to the floor. Something hit the wall hard enough to make it shake. There was scratching, low and frantic, then a sound like something tearing. And then silence. When I opened my eyes, Milo was gone. The room was trashed, but he was gone. Things got better. Slowly, I slept through the night again. I went back to school and kept my head down. For the first time in years, I felt like I had my life back. The drawing stopped. The scratching stopped. I still had dreams sometimes, but they faded like fog in the morning. Eventually, I moved out. Got a place with a roommate in the city, focused on work, kept my schedule full. I didn't think about Milo for years, until 2 months ago. It was a Friday. My roommate was out of town. I was lying in bed around 2 a.m., scrolling on my phone. I heard the bathroom door creak. I figured maybe I'd left it cracked open. I got up, checked it, shut it. Everything seemed normal. But when I got back in bed, something felt different. The air was heavy, like the room had filled with water and I hadn't noticed. I turned my head. Milo was lying next to me. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't speaking. He just stared at the ceiling, unmoving, his hands folded on his chest like he was waiting to be buried. He hadn't aged, still had that yellow hair, that thin, papery skin. those silver, horizontal eyes. My whole body locked up. I couldn't even breathe right. I stared at the ceiling until the sun came up. When I looked again, he was gone. Since then, everything's unraveled. I don't remember quitting my job, but I did. My manager says I sent her a resignation email at 3 a.m. I checked. It's there. It's in my writing. But I have no memory of typing it. I find drawings again, ones I don't remember making. They're always of my apartment, always with him in them. Sometimes he's sitting on the couch. Sometimes he's outside the window. Sometimes he's standing over my bed. Last week, I woke up in the hallway closet. I was standing up, my head pressed to the wall. I've started blacking out. I'll check the clock, 7 p.m., then blink, and it's 9. I find food in the fridge I didn't buy. One night, I found muddy footprints on the floor, just 2, facing my bedroom door. I tried setting up a camera, but the footage always cuts out between 1 and 4 a.m. I haven't spoken to my aunt. Her number doesn't work. Her house is empty. No forwarding address. It's like she vanished. I found a note inside my freezer yesterday, written in my handwriting. It said, "He lives here now." I don't remember writing it. Tonight, I turned on all the lights. I locked the bedroom door from the inside. I turned off my phone and sat in bed with the TV on. It's 3 a.m. I can feel him in the room. I haven't looked. I won't. I know he's here. I know if I meet his eyes, I'll never come back. If you're reading this, don't say his name. Don't imagine him. Don't draw him. He was never imaginary. He was a seed, and I watered him. I hadn't talked to any of them in a while. Not after what happened. It's been over a year now, but I still flinch when I hear elevator chimes. It started on a Tuesday night. I was home scrolling through old group chats, trying to kill time when my phone lit up. It was 9 p.m. The name said Reggie, which surprised me. I hadn't heard from him in months. His message was short. "You ever heard of the elevator game?" I stared at it for a few seconds. I'd heard of it, sure. One of those internet rituals that float around late-night forums. Supposedly, if you enter a building with at least 10 floors and press a certain sequence of buttons in an elevator, you'll reach another world. People claim to see shadow figures, lose time, or never return. I replied with a joke. "Isn't that just a creepypasta thing?" Reggie didn't answer right away. At 10 p.m., he sent a new text. "We're trying it tonight. Come through. 404 Grover Street. Don't be a bitch." I shouldn't have gone. But something about the way he said it, the building's address, the challenge, made it hard to ignore. Maybe it was nostalgia. Maybe it was guilt. We hadn't hung out since graduation, and part of me missed those nights. We'd roam the city with nothing to do and no one to answer to. I drove over around 10:30. The building on Grover was wedged between 2 dark storefronts. It had no name, no lights outside. The lobby was quiet. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the floor was covered in a gray, sticky carpet that hadn't seen a vacuum in years. They were already there. Reggie, Jules, Omar, and Carly. No hugs, no catching up, just nods. Everyone looked tense, like they were there for something serious, but didn't want to say it out loud. Reggie held a crumpled piece of paper with the rules printed out. He read them aloud, even though we could all see it. "You press the buttons in this order. 4, 2, 6, 2, 10, 5, 1. When you get to 5, someone might get on. Don't look at them. Don't speak. If you reach another world, you'll know. It'll look the same, but something will feel off. If that happens, press 1 to return. If the elevator goes up instead of down, don't get off. Just keep your eyes forward." No one laughed. It felt like we were about to do something we couldn't take back. Jules went first. She disappeared behind the metal gate. 5 minutes passed. Then the elevator came back and she stepped out, chewing gum and shrugging. "It's just a broken-ass elevator," she said. Omar went next. He looked pale when he returned, but said nothing happened. Said the lights flickered, but that was it. Carly didn't say much when she came back either, except that the elevator stuttered and made weird noises. Then Reggie stepped in. "If I don't come back," he said, smirking, "I'm probably king of the other world." He shut the gate. We waited. 10 minutes, then 20. At 11:15, we pressed the button. Nothing happened. We banged on the door. Still nothing. Jules tried forcing the gate, but it wouldn't budge. The elevator had just stopped. No one came out. No sounds. No movement. At 1 a.m., we gave up and left. The next day, Carly texted saying she hadn't slept. She kept hearing tapping sounds in her apartment, like someone knocking from beneath her floor. Jules called me crying that afternoon. She said every time she closed her eyes, she saw the elevator doors. Omar didn't answer anyone. By the weekend, he was gone. His roommate said he packed up and left without a word. No note. Just gone. I stayed away after that. Didn't talk to any of them. I tried to push it out of my head. Told myself it was all a weird coincidence. People vanish all the time. People imagine things when they're scared. Then on Monday morning, I walked past the Grover building on my way to work. It was 6 a.m., streets still quiet. As I passed, I stopped in front of the entrance. I don't know why. Maybe part of me expected to see Reggie standing there. Maybe I hoped. Instead, I heard knocking. Not from the lobby doors, from inside the elevator shaft. 3 knocks. Pause. 2 more. I ran. That night I didn't sleep. My apartment felt wrong. I couldn't explain it, but the air felt thicker, like it was waiting for something. Around 2 a.m., I heard it again. Knocking. This time from behind my bedroom wall. I put my ear to it. 3 knocks. Pause. 2 more. Just like a Grover. I started dreaming of the elevator. I'd be standing inside, pressing the buttons, but they were blank. The walls would stretch, the ceiling vanish. Sometimes when the doors opened, I'd see my old neighborhood. Sometimes I'd see darkness. Once, it was a mirror. One morning, I woke up to a voicemail. No number, just static, and beneath it, a voice, faint, but it sounded like Reggie. "You left me." I deleted it, but it came back the next morning. Same voice. This time, it said, "You weren't supposed to leave." That Friday, I returned to the Grover building. I got there around 8:30 p.m. The streets were quiet again. I went inside. The air was colder than I remembered. The elevator doors were closed, but the button lit up when I pressed it. That was new. I stepped in. Same rusty gate, same smell of burnt metal. My fingers moved through the sequence. 4, 2, 6, 2, 10, 5, 1. The elevator started moving. At first, everything was normal. But after floor 10, it didn't go down. It went up, and the lights dimmed. The air changed. It was thick, wet, like the inside of a freezer. I tried to press 1 again, but the button didn't light up. The elevator stopped. The doors opened. It looked like the lobby, but the lights flickered slower, almost like breathing. The floor was covered in a fine black dust. The air smelled like dirt after rain, but stronger, like something had been buried and recently dug up. I didn't step out. Then I heard footsteps, slow, shuffling, coming toward the elevator. I looked down. I didn't want to see who or what it was. The footsteps stopped right at the door. Then I heard breathing. Close. "You're late," a voice whispered. I slammed the button for 1. The doors closed hard. The elevator jolted down. It dropped fast, too fast. My knees buckled. Then it stopped. I was back on the ground floor. I stumbled out into the lobby and nearly threw up. My legs were shaking. My ears were ringing. I ran out into the street. It was 9 p.m. I never went back. But the knocking didn't stop. 3 knocks. Pause. 2 more. It followed me. To work. To the grocery store. Even in the bathroom, I hear it. In my walls. In my head. I moved out of my apartment 2 weeks later. Rented a cheap place across town. Didn't matter. The elevator found me again. It started in my dreams, then in real life. I'd be in a store and hear the ding of an elevator opening behind me. I'd turn, nothing there. Then I started seeing reflections. At first, I thought I was tired. I'd glance at a window and see myself standing still. But when I moved, the reflection didn't. Once, I saw myself smiling when I wasn't. I deleted all my social media. I threw out every mirror in my apartment. Then, 3 weeks ago, I got a package. No return address. Inside was a small object wrapped in newspaper. I opened it slowly. An elevator button, plastic, cracked. The Nova 5 had been scratched off. There was a note. You took the wrong floor. Try again. I dropped it, tried to throw it away. That night, it was on my pillow. I smashed it with a hammer, buried it in a park 2 miles from my place. Next morning, it was on my kitchen table. I don't know what it was. I started losing time. I'd look at the clock and hours would pass without me realizing. Once, I found myself standing in the hallway outside my apartment, holding my car keys, not knowing why. My mom came to visit last week. She said I looked sick. I told her I hadn't been sleeping. She stayed for dinner. When I went to the kitchen to grab plates, I caught her standing in front of the microwave, not moving, not blinking, for 2 whole minutes. When I called her name, she blinked like she'd just woken up, didn't remember zoning out. That night, I saw something in her rearview mirror as she left. It looked like me, but I was inside and it was outside. The elevator doesn't need the building anymore. I think it's in me now, in my habits, in the way I stopped answering calls, in the way I double lock every door. It's in the silence I can't stand and the white noise I can't sleep without. I stopped going to work, couldn't focus. Every time I walked past a reflective surface, I felt something watching me. Sometimes I'd see it just for a second, staring back with wide eyes, not angry, just waiting. Last night, I tried recording myself. I opened the voice memo app and started talking. I explained everything. Grover Street, the sequence, Reggie, the knocking. But when I played it back, the voice was wrong. It sounded like me. Same tone, same pitch, but the words weren't mine. They said, I'm almost home. I deleted the file. I recorded again. This time, the voice said, you're not real. I haven't spoken out loud since. Tonight it's quiet. No knocking, no static, no dreams. I should feel safe, but I don't. I think the elevator's not coming for me anymore. It already did, and now I'm the one knocking.